I really enjoy making crafts at Christmas time, and I especially love when they're quick and affordable. Hey everyone, welcome back to Glue La La. My name's Jess, and today I have 3 more Christmas decor projects. And you know, I love farmhouse, so that's the style that I'm going to do them in, but as always, you can change them to fit your style. All right everyone, let's get started. The Dollar Tree always has some of the most amazing gift bags at Christmas time. So when I saw this one that says Christmas Tree Farm, I knew that I wanted to create a wall hanging out of it. And it's nice and big too, so it's always nice to have bigger pieces at Christmas time. So I just measured the bottom of the bag where that little border is, and then I measured from the top too, just to make sure that it was spaced evenly. And then I just cut the image off of the front of the bag. To create the wood pieces for the top and the bottom of the wall hanging, I'm using these giant craft sticks that I found at Walmart. And I always like to use my paper trimmer to cut sticks down. Now, if I had painter's stir sticks on hand, I think that probably would have fit across the top of the bag, and you could have just used one stick. But since I didn't have any of those on hand, that's why I chose to use the craft sticks. So I'm cutting down 4 for the top and 4 for the bottom. And I think my sticks ended up measuring out at about 6.5 inches because my bag was about 13 inches across. I wanted a darker stain for my craft sticks, so I mixed together the Antique Wax by Waverly with just a little bit of the ink chalk paint. And that way it kind of darkened it up a little bit. So to apply to my craft sticks, I decided to use a wet wipe because I wanted to dilute it and I wanted to be able to see that wood grain through the stain more. And I'm actually going to be using this same stain on all 3 projects today. And I would say that I probably mixed about 3 parts antique wax to 1 part of the ink color chalk paint. I really lucked out with these craft sticks because they had a nice wood grain pattern to them. Sometimes it's a gamble. You never really know what you're going to get out of those packs. So to attach my craft sticks together, I'm just using a little bit of Scotch tape to hold them together. And then I'm using my Tiny Attacher by Tim Holtz, which is just a mini stapler, to add 2 staples to the seam between the 2 sticks. And then I did that for all 4 sets of the sticks because I wanted to create a little bit more weight on the bottom of this wall hanging. That's why I decided to add craft sticks to the front and back side of this wall hanging. And if you don't have the Tiny Attacher, you could just use a regular stapler, or you could just glue the 2 sticks together. Next, I just hot glued my sets of sticks to the top and the bottom of my gift bag. Now, if you wanted this to be a little bit more stable, you could add the gift bag to a piece of foam core board or even a piece of poster board, but I felt that the weight of the sticks along the bottom would keep it from curling up as it's hanging on the wall. The great thing about using gift bags for Christmas crafts is that it's so easy to customize. If you like more of the glam or bling style for Christmas, you could get a really sparkly gift bag and cut that out, and then instead of staining the craft sticks, you could paint them with some metallic paint or even cover them with some rhinestones or pearls or a nice shiny ribbon. It really is easy to customize when you're using gift bags. I have a tool called a Cropadile, and it will pretty much chomp a hole through most materials, so I knew it would cut a hole through the 2 layers of the craft sticks. So I just marked out on the top of the gift bag where I wanted my hangers to go, and I used my Cropadile just to, like I said, punch out a hole. But if you don't have the Cropadile, you could definitely use a drill, or you wouldn't even have to do that. You could just hot glue a ribbon to the back side of the bag instead. Since the Christmas trees on the front of this bag had that black and red buffalo plaid print on them, I thought that this black and red plaid ribbon that I found at Walmart would be a really nice hanger for the wall hanging. So I just fished the ribbon from the back side of the sign through the front, and I tied it in a knot, and then I looped it over to the other side and did the same thing. I trimmed the excess off the fronts of the knots, and then I just created a simple loopy bow, and I glued that to the top of the piece of ribbon just to add a little bit more character to my wall hanging. second project is just as quick and easy as the first. So I'm taking 2 of these wooden boxes that you can find at the Dollar Tree, and it really doesn't matter what is on the little drawer that's on the inside. And I'm only going to use 1 of the little drawers. So I'm using the 2 outside pieces and 1 of the little drawers, and I'm doing the same thing with the antique wax and the ink chalk paint again, and I'm using a wet wipe to stain all 3 pieces. I was actually inspired to make this piece by something that I saw on the Wayfair website. I thought it was really cute, and it was a great way to display the Bottlebrush trees that I've been collecting, but it's also great as a standalone piece too. After all 3 of my boxes were dry, I decided just to use some hot glue and glue them all together. I held them in place with some of the clamps from the Dollar Tree, and these are wood, so if you wanted to, you could use wood glue, but I always use the Gorilla Glue sticks, and anytime I use anything that's not from the Dollar Tree, I usually try to have it linked in the description box below. So when I glued these together, I just made sure that on one side the boxes were lined up, because that smaller one wasn't going to line up on all the sides, so I just wanted to make sure that the side that was going to be facing forward was flush with each other. So if you wanted your boxes to look more like the picture, you could use some of the wooden letters that they sell at the Dollar Tree, and you could paint them any color you wanted to, but I wanted mine to look just a little bit more fun and whimsical, so I decided to cut my letters out on my Cricut. I just cut out the letters J and Y in some white vinyl. And then for the O, I decided to do something a little bit different. So I took one of the garland ties that you can find at the Dollar Tree or at Walmart or Michael's, and I just formed it into a circle to create a little mini wreath for the letter O. I hot glued the wreath to the center box, and then I embellished it with just a little bow that I tied out of some gingham ribbon. So like I mentioned before, the picture had the Bottlebrush trees on it, and I really have been liking those this year. So I decided to display some of my trees on the top of this piece, but I also think that it looks nice enough just to sit by itself also. Okay, so for the last project, I wanted to jump on the gnome trend and create a really fun garland. I started by trimming a little piece off of this fleece scarf that I found at the Dollar Tree. And as I was cutting it, I realized that it was just a little bit uneven, so I did my best to square it up, but I knew it didn't have to be perfect. Once I had my piece of fleece evened up, I used my ruler to mark every 3 inches across the bottom. And then I went back through and across the top, I marked in 1.5 inches to start, and then I marked every 3 inches from there. So it went 1.5 inches, and then I went right to the 4.5 inch mark, and then 3 inches from there. Now I just used my ruler to connect the dots. So I lined my ruler up with one of the bottom marks to the top mark, and I cut it at an angle, and I found it was easiest to use my rotary cutter. And because of how I marked it, then that way I was getting more triangles out of the one piece. If you don't have a rotary cutter, I would probably just use the chalk to mark the line the whole way down, and then you could easily cut it out with scissors. The great thing about the chalk is that you can just kind of dust it off after you're all done cutting, and you don't see any of the lines or the marks that you put on from it. To be able to hang the gnome from the garland, I needed to add a little hanger at the top. So I laid one of my triangles down, and I just added in a little piece of jute twine that I folded in half, and I put the folded end in towards the hat. That way the 2 strings that came out the top I would be able to use to tie on to my garland. Then I just used some hot glue, and I hot glued down both sides of the hat. I took a few grocery bags and I cut them into smaller pieces, and that's what I decided to use to fill up my hat and make them look a little bit more puffy. You could definitely use pillow stuffing or polyfill here, but since I already had the bags on hand, I decided just to use those, and I used a little chopstick to kind of help push the bags up towards the point of the hat. You just want to make sure that your hot glue is really set up before you start doing this so that you don't bust the seams out of the sides of the hat. The Dollar Tree has these great snowballs out this year. They come in a couple different sizes, and I knew this medium size would be great for this gnome. So I kind of fluffed it out a little bit, and then I ran just a little bit of hot glue on the inside of my hat, and I attached the snowball to the inside of my hat. Now, if you can't find these snowballs at your Dollar Tree, you could definitely either make your own pom-pom, or you could use a styrofoam ball as well. I know a lot of people like to use the wooden beads for the noses on the gnomes, but I decided to go a little bit untraditional, and I'm using these mini pine cones from the Dollar Tree as the nose for my gnomes. Now, like I said before, I'm making a garland out of these, but I think these would be really cute just to make to hang on your tree, or even as a decoration for the gifts that you'll be giving this year. So if you're crazy about gnomes like I am, you could just make a ton of those little gnomes and hang it from your garland, but I decided to add a second element to my garland. I had a pack of these wooden bells on hand from the Dollar Tree, and I decided to stain them with that same antique wax and ink mixture that I've been using the whole video. I wanted to decorate up my bells a little bit, but instead of going with a regular bow, I decided to use this black and white gingham ribbon, and I just cut a small strip of it and tied one single knot in the center. Then I dovetailed the ends, and it kind of gave it a little bit of a bow tie effect, and that's what I decided to hot glue to the top of my bells. I'm using a piece of the nautical rope that you can find at the Dollar Tree as the base for my garland, and I always like to create little hanging loops on each side, and I like to finish them off a little bit. So I decided to cut a strip of that fleece scarf again, and once I had my loops folded over and hot glued into place, then I just hot glued a little piece of that fleece around the edges of the rope just to kind of hide where it is folded in half. When I add things to a garland, I always like to have my ruler handy so that it can help me space out my pieces evenly. So I started with the bell and I tied that on, and I just tied a simple knot at the top, and I left it a little bit loose. That way, once I had my garland hanging, I could adjust the things as I needed to make sure that they were hanging down evenly from the rope. I can't wait to add all of these projects to my Christmas decorations. And yes, that means I am not completely decorated for Christmas yet. I know I've been talking about it for weeks. It's probably going to be one of those years where by the time I finally get done decorating, it'll be time to take everything down. Let me know in the comments, do you feel like you're behind on your decorating, or are you already ready for Christmas? All right, everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, do all the things. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.